Hello and welcome to the 14 Going on 41 podcast. I'm Arvind, and joining me is my delightful co-host, the Gen Z speaking, ocean loving, trash talking, bad at mathin', always Morgan, now podcasting, Kiara, a runner.
That's me. I'm the bad at mathing, curious 14-year-old teen who has taken the unconventional path of world schooling or, dropping out of school. And each week, the 41-year-old Arvind and I speak with guests who have taken the road less traveled.
And you have to bring up my age on every podcast, Kiara.
Okay, firstly, I thought you were proud of being 41, okay? And secondly, it's not like anyone's forgetting because it's literally the name of our show.
That's true. Though what happens when you turn 15 in a few months? Do we have to change the name? We should have probably thought about this before.
Yeah, we should have thought about this beforehand. But I don't think so. I like the name. I mean, 15 going on 42 just doesn't have the same ring.
I agree. I think we should keep the name of the show and we'll figure it out when we get to that fork in the road moment and see what we do. But one person who's had a few fork in the road moments is our guest today and has absolutely taken the road less traveled. And her story resonates a lot with you. Isn't that right, Kiara?
Our guest today is the fabulous Lisa Boston. She is an educator turned world traveler who has made the entire world a classroom for her kids. Her daughter and I went to school together in Bali last year. And that's
Wait one sec. You went to school?
Yes.
I thought you dropped out.
But it was a very different school, a very unconventional school.
Huh. Okay. We'll hear more about that.
We should talk more about this on the podcast, yes. But that school is how I got to meet all four members of the amazing Boston family. We have a lot in common. They dive, I dive with my mom, you dive. We all have a lot in common.
Well, I would love to dive into this podcast with Lisa. But before that, I think it's time for my weekly lesson.
Yes, you mean
Gen Z word of the day.
Okay, so this word is actually so perfect for Lisa. The word is IRL. Like Lisa and her family are learning volcanoes from volcanoes. They're not studying it in some textbook. They're actually there and actively learning it. So that's learning IRL.
That sounds kind of dangerous. You use the word active and volcano. Isn't it safer to learn from a textbook? You're not going to have lava spewing at you from a textbook. But if you're on a mountain, you're like, oh, look, that's a volcano. But if you see a hot red liquid spewing out of it, run for your life.
I didn't say active volcano. Okay? I just said volcano and you're actively at the volcano, not active. I just want to clarify that.
Okay, fair enough. It does sound dangerous, but no, I know what you mean. Let me try the word. IRL. Okay, it sounds a bit like a fancy vitamin. It sounds a bit like the IRS, for the guys who do your taxes in the US, and also the name of a wrestler from the 90s named Irvin R. Shyster. But let me try and pronounce it phonetically. IRL, Earl, maybe? And it's just Gen Zers can't spell the word Earl, like the Earl of Sandwich, the 18th century aristocrat who apparently is credited with inventing the sandwich. So Earl is just a bad pronunciation, a spelling of the word.
Yes, Earl is a bad pronunciation of IRL because no one says Earl. It's just IRL.
Well, I was kidding with this one, Kiara, because I know this word. Because my nieces use it all the time. IRL stands for in real life. Like, for real, yo.
I think this is the first time on the podcast you actually knew what the word meant. There's a first time for everything. Progress. It's actually funny because IRL is used a lot while texting, which happens to be online. So when you say IRL, it's not in real life.
Well, you Gen Zers never cease to amaze me with things I'm still trying to learn. No cap.
But I think it's time to cap this session like we did in the first episode and bring on our guest, Lisa Boston.
Woohoo!
We're back, and today I am incredibly thrilled to have Lisa Boston on the podcast. She is an educator who didn't just teach from a classroom, she's made the entire world a school for her children, from taking them across continents to immersing them in hands on learning experiences. She's created a unique approach to education that blends adventure, it blends curiosity, and it blends real world exploration. Lisa, I'm so excited to learn from your journey. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's really great to have you, Lisa. I must say, when Kiara told me that she was world schooling, she's the only person I ever knew who did that. And then she promised me that we would have another person on this pod. She talked about Lisa Boston and how her entire family is world schooling. And at the time, I still wasn't sure if it was real. And Lisa Boston sounded like a bit of a made up name. She took her favorite Simpsons character and a city that was in front of her, like something from Usual Suspects. So I'm like, I'm not sure. And then the first time we recorded, we had to reschedule. So I was still telling Kiara, look, I don't think this world schooling thing is real. So I am so thrilled to actually know that you've been doing this for so long. And everything I've heard from Kiara about your journey is incredible. But for folks who are less familiar, I'd just love to start off with you as an educator decided to take your family off the traditional education path and go down world schooling. Can you just tell us a bit more about what world schooling actually is and what triggered that thought for you?
Of course, yeah. So you're kind of catching on to this movement, which is growing and it's getting bigger every time, especially after COVID, because people are starting to see that there's alternative ways of educating their kids and seeing the world. Everything shut down, everything became a lot more contained. And as soon as things opened up, I think a lot of perspectives changed within that time. And that was similar for us. So me and my husband, we're both qualified teachers. He is a primary teacher. I'm a secondary English teacher. We worked in the traditional landscape in international schools. We left the UK a long time ago. The world has always had a little bit more interest for us. So we've worked in international schools, standard curriculum, the International Baccalaureate, GCSE, British curriculum, standard. Within school and with our own children, we know that it doesn't tick all the boxes of what you want. You know, we have curriculums and we have exams and we have tick boxes and meetings and things like that. And we're told these things are designed for our children. They're the best thing for our children's future. But in the actual teaching environment, I experienced kids with burnout. I saw stress. I saw self-harm. I saw things which were not good for well-being. I saw curriculums which were the same as 40 years ago, still being peddled in the same way. And there was a lot of questions to how is that preparing our kids for the future? And how is this helping our kids grow into whole beings? So there was a lot of questions around that whilst in this system.
Was that a thought process that built out over time, or was there a moment in time you're like, gosh, this isn't working?
I think there's always been an element of doubt in the back of our mind. I think we're quite alternative in some ways. Not going down the conventional, let's get married, let's buy a house, let's have children, let's stay in our home and do this thing. We've always had a slightly different path. So I think it was always there. But then when your own children come into the picture, instead of it just being, well, it was okay for us and it never did us any harm, things start to change. So I think our kids made the connection bigger and stronger. And we knew that there was something else out there. During COVID, we were in Brunei and we were locked within the country. They shut the borders for 2 years. It was one of the longest closed border situations. In that time, we lost a family member in the UK and we couldn't go back and see them. So there was a situation of, wow, life really is quite short. And we've been in this really horrible lockdown. So our contract was coming up for renewal. And we said, oh, let's do the sensible thing and renew our contract. Wait. No, let's not. Let's sell everything and let's go and see the world because we haven't been able to do anything for 2 years. So going back to the very original question, the basic premise of world schooling is that you use the world to educate. And that can take so many different forms. So I can talk more about what it looked like for us, but it's very, very varied. But using the world and using the things that are around you and the environments and the people and the cultures, everything to learn from.
So I just want to say, as a world schooler myself, I get a lot of questions and a lot of people's reactions when I first tell them that I don't go to school. And sometimes the reactions are very positive and sometimes the reactions are very negative. And I don't mean to stereotype at all, but usually I do find that when I tell someone who is a teacher that I actually like, I'm not in school, they are the most shocked. And you were a teacher in a traditional school, and for you to be doing this, it's amazing.
From whatever I've heard, I'm a big fan of world schooling. And despite my educational background, I'm a big fan of alternative ways. But schools seem to suggest this very structured way of learning. And world schooling is fluid, figure it out and figure out what's right for the child. How did you kind of reconcile the two as an educator yourself who had actually grown up and built a career in the more rigid system of trying to keep the pros of that system while maintaining this kind of fluidity of the new system?
World schooling can take various forms. So essentially using the world around you, but that could be you homeschool and just within a certain area and you just use the environment around you to do that. It could be that you travel and you follow an online curriculum, or you have a really structured approach to your education. It's just you're incorporating different destinations in there. So when we first set off, my two children were primary age, and my primary teacher husband had big aspirations of the curriculum that he's been teaching. We're going to bring that with us, and we're going to incorporate a lot of what we're doing together. And what we realized is that was not what we wanted to do.
And when you say we, is it all four of you? Is it the girls? Who was the most vocal we in there?
All four of us. We are very fortunate that we have very similar paths and ideas of what our end goals are. So there's not much conflict in these decisions. But what we found was you're sitting in Egypt and then you're pulling out a maths textbook thinking about why are we doing this maths textbook and this environment? It doesn't make any sense. So we became a lot more fluid and used the opportunities that were around us. We used our children's interests to kind of guide where we were going. So the curriculum came a very much secondary thing, the standardized curriculum. Whilst they were primary age, it was very, very easy to do. As they're getting older, this is when the questions come from the school teacher side of things. Well, what about qualifications? What about exams? So as time's gone on, we've become much more comfortable with the idea that we don't think that is the way forward. If you want to go down into being a doctor, then you have to. You're going to have to go down that route. It's going to be very difficult to do anything else. But the world's changing really quickly. So the traditional trajectory and traditional paths, I don't think are fit for the journey that we're going into the future. I think they're very, very different.
You've just talked about the world changing. When you were 14 years old, did you ever imagine there'd ever be a concept like what your family is doing? What did learning mean to you at that age?
I don't think I was really bothered about learning at 14. It wasn't a focus point. There was much more interesting things to be doing. I was in a standard high school, probably quite bored. I was academically okay. I didn't struggle. I didn't have to work very hard to sort of sit in a good position. So I just slid through school doing what I needed to do. So it wasn't a life-changing, I'm going to school and I'm so inspired and I'm going to finish and I'm going to have this amazing career. The inspiration plummeted. So yeah, I think my husband comes from a family that did travel a lot. His parents lived in India and traveled in Afghanistan and Pakistan and had a baby with them. But they also went back to traditional education. He was in that system as well. So the travel side of it, very much on their family. My family, no travel whatsoever. So it's quite a new thing. And when I was 14, I don't think I thought that far ahead. I probably would have been the conventional, well, I get a house and I get married and I have children and I get a job. Tick.
Tick the boxes, someone else's framework.
Yeah.
And when did the travel light bulb go off for you?
It was in 2006. I had finished university. It was New Year's Eve, and I decided to book a volunteer trip to Tanzania to go and live with Maasai warriors and work within wildlife. And I did that, and then I didn't stop.
Wow. I mean, that's a great first trip to do. What were you doing with Maasai warriors? Was this in Serengeti or at least close to it?
It was in Tanzania. So I was living in a traditional boma, which is a wooden hut made out of sticks and cow poo. I was sleeping on a pile of sticks, essentially. And yeah, we were living with Maasai warriors and we were building things and doing animal tracking. Yeah, very random.
That is very cool. Did you track any fun animals?
It was things like you'd be walking to like the toilet and there would be a giraffe on the hill over there, or you'd be going to sleep and you could hear a lion roar or hyenas. So yeah, there was lots of exposure to lots of different animals just there as well, which was bizarre, not very far away.
Wow. I think my dad would be extremely jealous of you.
It is an amazing experience.
I might be nervous trying to go to the bathroom with the giraffe right in front of me, but
it's the worst thing is that you have a head torch and it's pitch black. From 6 p.m. it's pitch black, and then your head torch, if you catch eyes, like the reflection in the eyes. So you walk and you just keep your head down because you don't want to catch the eyes of anything. And then when you're in the bathroom, it's all the spiders and the insects that you can see. So you're just keep your eyes closed and pretend that there's nothing there. It's okay.
I would just try to hold it all through the night, and then in the daylight, try to figure out how to manage. But that does sound like a really cool experience. So that's when the travel bug started. But then at some point you went down the getting married and got into education, despite not necessarily being huge proponent of it from your school days. How do you get into education?
Okay, so we booked a one-way flight out of England and we went to Malaysia. When AirAsia started doing London to Malaysia, and it was really cheap. It was like £100 to travel. So we're like, great, let's book this flight. And we traveled around Southeast Asia for about 6 months. And then we started to run out of money. No, what do we do?
Money again.
And my friend was in South Korea and said, come to South Korea and teach English. It's really easy. You make loads of money. So we went to Korea and we started teaching and we started to make money, and it was quite nice. And then we decided to get married in the middle of that. And we were living in Korea at the time. Obviously, our family's in the UK. And we decided to travel our way and get married in India. So we actually got married in Goa. We got married on the beach in Palalim.
Oh, that's an amazing place to get married.
There you go. Yeah. And then we went like through to Hampi on our honeymoon, down into Kerala. So we did all of India. And then we went back to teaching in Korea for a year and then decided to have a baby. And when we decided to have a baby, we were like, oh no, we have to be grown-ups now. Like we have to think about security and what are we going to do? And because we've been teaching, we thought actually, if teaching is something that we'll always be able to get a job and we can go anywhere in the world. So it wasn't this, I long to be an educator. It was quite a practical decision, in all honesty. So from there, we went back to the UK. My husband trained as a teacher there. We had another baby. And then when she was 5 weeks old, we moved to Cyprus and we started teaching Korea in Cyprus.
Wow.
Not conventional.
That is not at all conventional. And that is extremely courageous, right? Once you have a kid, I know a lot of people is like, okay, no more faffing about. Now's the time to be grown ups. We're going to be in one place. We're not going to move. It's important. But for you to be able to continue on that path, and it sounds like also instill that curiosity and the courage to take the unconventional path amongst your daughters is truly amazing. And so now in the world schooling system, is it just entirely like focus on your passion? For instance, like your elder one. The elder one is Indy?
The eldest one is Indy, yeah.
Okay. So Indy is loving her arts, but is she getting some math? Is she getting some science? Like how does she figure out her learning journey?
So it comes more in a practical sense. So maths will be our theory with Indy is that it's practical. It's something that she's going to use. So it will be money exchange. How much is this worth? And how does this currency work? And if you pay this much, how much are you going to get back in change? She doesn't need to work out the angles of a triangle. That's not something which is bothered by. We're trying to encourage a bit more measurement because she does a lot of art, but she likes to, in her way, she says, I like to eyeball it, which she seems to have a good eye and is able to measure things in her own way. But even then, part of that process is failure, where it didn't work because you didn't measure it. So what are you going to do next time? So these skills are incorporated more into what we're doing. So science-wise, we do scuba diving, that sort of exposure. We're in Bali. She learns about the rice cycle, the plantation of rice. We have sort of the cultural elements. We have forging of knives. We have the experiential elements where it isn't a static, you have to learn about the Great Fire of London. It's not relevant what we're doing. So instead she learns about the Balinese offerings that they make for their gods, and she learns about the temple ceremonies. And so that's where it comes in. It's integrated within where we are. We're learning from the world as opposed to this design document from many years ago.
That is really cool. You did talk about measurements. I found one super practical piece my wife always brings up is baking. Every time she's baking and then realizing, oh, I need to convert this now for 8 people instead of 5. And is like in real time multiplying things by like 1.6, often asking me to do it. But it's amazing how when you start to think about the practicality of math, unless you're doing some research, you're building some cool algorithms, for the most part, I'm not differentiating and integrating things in most of my life.
Yeah, you also have to think about the tools which are around us. And again, this is another part of what's happening. In the 2 years that we left and then sort of restarted this traveling journey, AI is transforming things massively. So it's teaching our kids, and all kids should be being taught how to use it as a tool rather than your new replacement brain. Yeah, you need some maths. You're going to need some of these skills, but there are also tools which will make it much easier.
And when you did make that switch, and Indy and Bo went from a curriculum to doing what y'all have been doing, I know y'all said that you're in sync most of the time, but what was their initial reaction to this idea of learning?
The question is also coming from Kiara, hearing you're in sync with your kids and your kids are in sync with the parents.
I don't relate.
And she doesn't relate.
As a teenager, I do not relate.
She's more a Backstreet Boys fan than in sync. But anyway.
Yeah. In sync. Yeah. Justin. It's all about Justin. The hardest part was this enforced curriculum right at the start, where we were, okay, we're going to do all these fun elements. We're doing this, we're doing that. Okay, now we need to do that little bit of curriculum that we said we were going to maintain, which is you get your maths workbook out. And that was just painful. It was painful for everybody. And the question was, well, why are we doing it? And I think that's what is neglected a lot of the time. Things just become ingrained. This is just what we do. And no one stops to go, but why are we doing that? I can think of it as an English teacher. We're still teaching novels and texts from 50, 60 years ago. Why are we still teaching those texts? Like, what's the world is changing and we need to change with it. So I'm asking this question of like, why are we doing this? What's the benefit? Is there a better way that we could do it? Became a bit of the driving force of making our decisions of how we educate.
And two kind of follow-up questions to the entire journey as you think about this, right? And look, my wife and I don't have kids, but we have a lot of friends who do, who have similar questions about, is the schooling system the right one for our kids? But they come back to, we don't know a better alternative. And so it feels like the less risky, safer option, right?
Yeah.
Now, how do you think about risk, right? Which is, you might get to a point where the kids are older and then, 10th grade, 11th grade, say, oh, I may want to study history or go into something. Some places actually require to get a degree. Some may require you to get the certification. In the early days, how did you all think about risk in this situation and managing that? And I had a second on financial risk, but I'll come back to that later.
Okay, so honestly, I don't think we really thought about risk in the same way. We saw it as an amazing opportunity for our family to be together. What we found with COVID is, at one point I was teaching online in one room, my husband's teaching online in another room, and my kids are downstairs in almost like a neglectful situation. And we wanted to reconnect with our kids. We know that they're young for a certain amount of time, and we wanted to make sure that we got to spend every minute with them, and we got a strong relationship, and we grew as a family. So instead of sending a kid off to a school for 8 hours a day and having somebody else teach them all these values about the world, we managed to do that ourselves. So that was a big driving force. So in terms of risk, totally worth it. There was no risk. It was massively beneficial, and we're still feeling the benefits of that now. In terms of long term, you can find a path. There is always a path anyway. It's just that this is the conventional path, but there is always a way around. So, for example, Jack actually started his career. He was a cameraman. He worked in TV production, and then now he's a teacher, like a full-time qualified teacher. And he made the decision to change at 30. I think there's not many people who studied something at 16 who are in the exact same job 30 years down the line. We like to think about projects. At this point in my life, this was my project. At this point in my life, this was my project. We grow, we change, our interests change. It all develops as our situations and our environments change. And in terms of, if one of my kids decides, I want to do history, I know they want to do history because they've got a passion for history. It's not been stuffed down their throat. They've found this thing that they feel, this is where I want to go. And there will always be a pathway through. And that we can find that. That's not a problem. If it means you have to go and take that exam, if you're that driven because this is what your passion is, you will figure it out, and you will take that exam and you will get that piece of paper, that very important piece of paper, which opens the next door for you. And there's always a way. I mean, I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. I'm still figuring that out.
Well, I think the way you're figuring things out is a phenomenal way to do it while enjoying life IRL, and while you're doing that, learning all along the way. As you're talking about next chapters, etc., right now you're in Bali. You've been traveling a lot before this, but you've actually stayed put in Bali for, is it a year and a half now?
Yeah, we're a year and a half in. So we got to the point of traveling where we had our family meeting. How's everybody feeling? What are you thinking? What you enjoying? What you're not enjoying? And we all came to the decision that we needed to stop and be still for a while. We needed to unpack the suitcase and have a place for things. And we all agreed Bali was that place. And then while that was happening, an opportunity came up where we were able to create our own school. And I say school in inverted commas. We were able to bring many of the elements of the education that we wanted into this school environment, but also to build community and a village around it. So we brought all these different elements, all these things that we thought, this makes great education. And we've nailed it down into Bali for now.
And what is the school like? How's it different from a traditional school?
Okay, so we run projects. Each term we have 2 projects that run. One of them is a set project. So, for example, this term has been food. And alongside that, we run a personal exploration project where you choose something and you set yourself a goal, and then you work through these different stages of development to reach that goal. So our food project, experiential, using AI, using tools. We grow things in the garden. We do from farm to table. We go to Michelin star restaurants. We go behind the scenes. We look at how the things we learned in the classroom apply in real life. We look at nutrition. The end of term project for food is our students will do a kitchen takeover where they will run a restaurant for an evening. They will design the menu. They will cook the menu. They will serve. They will present all. So that's real life. We've learned lots of things within a classroom environment, and now we're going to apply them to a real setting. And then the personal projects are, something that you decide is your passion. And then you are through a structured cycle to get to this end product. We've had someone, Indy, learned to crochet. So she started not knowing how to crochet, and she wanted to crochet herself a hat by the end. We've had full Halloween costumes designed. We've had music made. We had a football kit designed. We've had Bitcoin and trading, cooking and running a cafe. It's open to the students. So that's what's different.
Maybe it's time, Kiara, to move to our next segment, which is the What If game.
Yes. Join us after the break where we will be playing the What If game. We're back and it's time for the What If segment. So, Lisa, to explain the segment to you, we're going to be asking you all questions that start with what if, going back to those fork in the road moments and seeing if things had gone differently, how you think life would have panned out. So I'm going to start off with the first question, which is, what if you could travel back to when you were 14 years old? What advice would you give your 14-year-old self?
That's a slightly tricky one, because thinking about what 14s are thinking about. So I'll a couple of perspectives. So I think first of all would be like, you are worthy, like you are valuable. Things that you think, things that you feel, things that you say, they're important. And I think a big thing about a teenager, sort of 14, is fitting in. So I think the other side of that is your uniqueness is what makes you special. And the fitting in is obviously important at the time, but stay as you. You shouldn't be changing anything to fit in with people. Yeah.
Great advice. I could definitely have used the second one when I was 14. The first, I thought I was super important. So someone maybe I needed to tell me I was less important. And that came over time. But no, I think fitting in and, you're just, as a 14-year-old, sometimes afraid to kind of march the beat of your own drum if it doesn't fit norms, and not losing that and knowing that being unique. I think that's great advice.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a different one. Based on what you said, right? That life-changing trip was Tanzania, staying with the Maasais, sleeping on sticks, which at the time, as you said it, I thought, that might hurt, but maybe it's kind of like acupuncture. I don't know. But what if you never did that trip? What if, post-uni, you didn't have the chance to travel and you got into some internship or some kind of job? How do you think life might have turned out different?
The trip to Tanzania was really interesting because I felt a real pull. I needed to go to Africa. There was something, and I don't know what, but there was this real pull to Africa without any indication that I've never been there before. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know anyone who had been through it. So there was this big pull. But if I'd ignored that, that pull, I don't know how to phrase this. Like, I'm not a grass is greener kind of person. I'm not someone who I always think something is better, but I'm also not someone who's super passionate. I'm not super driven, but I am very restless. I get bored very quickly, unless something has meaning to me. So, I had jobs where I worked in recruitment, and I can do the job, but I don't like the job. There's no, I'll be rich if I do really. I don't care. So I think I would just be plodding through job after job until hopefully that pull becomes too much and I go traveling again.
Did eventually get pulled in? No, that makes sense. It sounds like from what you said, if it hadn't happened then, it would have probably happened 6 months later or 1 year later.
Yeah.
And my only explanation for the Africa pull is, well, all humans apparently, we came from Africa. So that's what Kenya said when they said we made it visa-free travel for anyone. Everyone came from here, just come back to the homeland. So
Come back.
maybe that's it.
Maybe.
So my what if question is, what if your family actually had decided to stay in one country and then teach at the same school for the next 10 years? How do you think your family would have experienced, normal school?
Well, my first thought was I'll just divorce them all and get a new family, and then I can go off and do my own thing. But that probably wasn't.
They do listen to this podcast, I'm assuming. So, we can edit it out if you want.
Yeah, just distort my voice from that section. And I didn't say that. AI, it must be AI. Again, I think it's something that could be done, but seeing my children now, and I have kids who can't wait to get to school in the morning and don't want to leave school at the end of the day. They're loving their life. They are enthusiastic. They're excited about their learning. So they could go to school and they'd be fine because we all went to school and we're all fine. But they wouldn't be the best versions of themselves. We'd be fine. We'd get on with this life, which is the norm, like most people do.
You sound super excited about that, Lisa.
I don't think we'd be as happy as we are.
Talked about them being excited in the morning to go to school. I remember when I was in Bali last year, I was staying back after school to continue being like in the school. And when I used to go to a traditional school, I couldn't wait to go home. And that was so different to how happy I was when I was in Bali.
Yeah. It's the community element as well. So instead of it like being, right, the doors are closed, off you go, get out, we're encouraged to stay around and to talk to each other. And the same, not just on a student level either, not just kids, but we're talking adults as well. So, we have this mixed age thing where we have 9-year-olds and 16-year-olds, and they're encouraged to learn together. Because I don't know about you guys, I think you're a perfect example, but we don't exclusively work with 41-year-olds because we're 41 in the real world. That's not how it works. We have this mixed skill set, and we have this mixed age, and we have this mix of backgrounds, and it all comes together and it's all enriching this one experience. But to limit it to, well, you're 14, so that's it, you just learn with 14-year-olds and that's it, it's not real.
It's funny as you say that. I'm reminded of something my wife told me, which is when in India we have often large families, so you have cousins, you have uncles, you have aunts, you have grandparents, you have grandaunts. And a friend was also telling me the same story. The value really comes from some of these generations coming together. So if you're a 41-year-old, you can learn something from the 60, 70, 80-year-old. You can also learn from the 14-year-old or the 12-year-old. And even within ages, a 6-year-old can look up to the 10-year-old, and there are influences. And so getting that kind of cross-pollination of ages is, I think, shown as a good trip to improve overall awareness, knowledge, well-being, etc.
It takes that village to raise a child. It has wisdom behind it. As humans, we've always lived in this village environment, and then suddenly, we've hit this 20th century. And I know in majority of the Western world, you have your house and your parents live 30, 40 minutes away, and you have this isolation, and it's a wasted opportunity. So as much as your in-laws might frustrate you, there will be something in this kind of communal element of learning.
I love my in-laws, by the way, so I can't comment. And they listen to this podcast as well. So I just need to
say that
on
again,
record.
just nice and loud so they hear that part.
What if your children had actually decided that they'd prefer a normal school compared to world schooling? How do you think your life would have pivoted then?
I think as the parent, I think we would have pushed to try world schooling first before admitting defeat and choosing the conventional path, because the value of what we're doing, I think, is so much more. But if you have unhappy children, then that will change the way that you make a lot of your decisions. So, if they were unhappy doing what we're doing, then the conventional route might be the way that we have to go. It's the flexibility of it. You go with the flow. Things change, people change. I would hope that they would change their mind at some point in this conventional path. But if they didn't, so be it. If they're happy, that's a driving decision making for me.
That is a good way to do it. And as a parent, hopefully you have some influence, right? They go to regular school. You just be like this harsh parent who's super strict, curfews. And then the moment you're world schooling, you're like, it's okay. We'll see a turtle.
Oh, yeah.
We'll get a Bora Bora.
That's fine. Yeah.
But no, that it's really amazing to give kids at that age the agency to be involved in the decision. I've always been fortunate that I felt that when I was in high school, my parents gave me that option where my dad was actually moving to another country. And my mom stayed back with me in the school I was, because apparently I said in 9th grade, oh no, I don't want to move. I'm quite happy with this school right now. If I play my cards right, I could become head boy. And the parents were like, okay, cool, you stay. 9th, 10th grade are important. And they did long distance for the sake of me, which I thought is commendable for parents to do that.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a different what if. Let's say education is off the table, right? Your education path. And I sense there may not necessarily be the highest degree of passion for that, but is, a means to an end. But now that you're actually running a school, clearly that is something that is a passion. Let's say world schooling is off the table. What if these were off the table? Where do you think you'd be right now?
I'd be married to someone rich with a yacht and just be like cruising around. I mean, that was always the plan B, I think. Where would I be right now? If it was a different alternative reality, I don't think I'd be in the UK. Maybe I would be I'd work on wildlife TV programs, or it would be something nature-based and still international, I think.
This isn't a what if question, but I figured people, especially parents who might be listening to the podcast, might have this question. What advice do you have for parents who might want to world school?
Just do it. Just book a flight and just do it. And I'm just using that in a very free sense, because you will feel into what's the right way of doing it for you. And like I say, if it didn't work, you just go back. You just slot back into your life. It will all be the same. But you've got to take that leap. You've got to trust that it will be okay. And then you just go. Just do it. Just do it.
Phil Knight will be very proud of that line. But that is great advice for many things in life. That is a great idea. I think we should absolutely do this. Do you have any more what if questions, Kiara, or do you want to move on to the next piece?
Now, I think it's time to move on to the happiness rating game. Arvind, do you want to explain this?
Absolutely. And we've touched on a lot of this already, Lisa, but we ask all our guests to rate from 1 to 5 how important certain parameters are to their happiness. And it's just interesting as we do this with many guests to get their views on it. 1, the lowest, 5, the highest. We'll just throw these factors at you. There's about 7 in total. Try not to go all 1s and 5s, but do whatever feels right for you.
Okay.
So let's start with the first, which is health. How important is health to you on a scale of 1 to 5?
5. Health is wealth. If you're not healthy, you can't do anything. Your body is number one. So if you're not looking after that, like as soon as you become ill, everything stops. So yeah, body health, number one. Well, no, number five. But
5 out of 5, but I hear you. Yeah.
The next one is actually wealth.
For happiness, 3. I think a level of comfort or security, which is different for everybody. So I don't think it's the financial amount, but it's your comfort level with that financial amount or that security level.
Makes sense. The math nerd in me that learned the law of associative property, you said health is wealth. Health was a 5, so therefore wealth should be a 5. But I'm kidding. This is how my math nerd works from years of conditioning. Let me ask you the next one. How about, and I think I know the answer, but let's try it. Fame.
1.
I was expecting a 0, but yeah, it did.
Oh, you said sense. No, because you said 1's 5, but yeah, I'll give it a 0. I'll give it a -5. -5.
In fairness, it is 1 to 5, and you played the game the right way. But yeah, I sense it would not have been high. Okay, great.
Okay, so the next one is fun.
5. You've got to enjoy the ride. It's not all about the destination. You've got to have fun. What's the point? What are you doing it for if you're not having fun?
That is true. It is why Kiara and I are doing this podcast and why we've had a lot of fun speaking with you, Lisa. Let me throw another one in there. How do you think about impact on others around you?
I was 5, 4, 5. I think it goes both ways. I think, I'm sure Kiara will agree, but when you travel and you meet and are exposed to a huge amount of different people and different cultures and different experiences, then the impact that individuals can have on you, but also the impact that you can have on others, both positive and negatively. So it's quite a complex one, actually, because it's how you handle that impact, maybe. But it's important. So I'm going to stick with 4.
Okay. The next one is friendships or connections.
5. Community, villages, exposure to others. Yeah, it's really important. You know, we're social beings. We need our social networks around us. Exposure to new ideas, new perspectives, I think is very important. Whether you agree with them or disagree with them, you need the exposure. Otherwise, you live in a bubble thinking that your world is right and everything you believe is the only way to believe something. So, yeah, definitely.
And I'm curious, now, you've been in Bali now for the last 18 months, but as you were traveling, how easy was it to maintain those friendships or connections? In today's virtual age, I know it's easier, but I'm curious if traveling had any positive or negative impact, because on the flip side, you get so much more exposure and so many more people, but building depth of connection as you're constantly moving.
So we have lifelong friends that we've met along the way. And then we never say goodbye. Our family tradition is that we don't say goodbye. We say, see you later, because we know that we will, and we do. And it can be quite random. Oh, we're in Bangkok. Oh, we're in Bangkok too. Great. And we meet. It could be more organized. We're going back to the UK for Christmas. We're meeting one family who are based in Holland, one family that are based in Scotland that we met in Egypt, and we were having a little reunion. We have people that we meet that we're like, yeah, we're not going to see you again. It was nice, but there isn't a long-term connection. So, you make some really strong friendships and you can make them quite quickly. And I think with the kids, when you're traveling, suddenly there'll be other kids around and they will be quick. It's like, quick, there's kids. Okay, let's make friends. And the holding themselves back isn't quite the same. They're much more open to meeting people, to talking to other people. So for the kids as well, their social skills have been enhanced, I think, by these connections.
Awesome. And then I think we had one last one on our rating. So I'll just throw it out there. How do you think about legacy?
Can you give me some context on that one?
So at least when we've asked people, many have said, or at least this is how I think about it. Sometimes fame is what do you think of you, people think of you in the here and now. And I personally don't rate that highly. But sometimes legacy is about what you leave behind in the world. It could be about you. It could be about an idea. It could be about, did something with world schooling that actually left an impact and changed how people think about it. Or actually, once I'm gone, and it really doesn't matter what happens after, right? So I think that's how I kind of frame it.
I see on an individual level, I don't think it's important to me, but knowing that any exposure that people have had to me has been positive is quite a nice idea. I think the key part of that legacy, so I might give it like a 2 or a 3, but the key part would be that my kids are happy. Me being a driving force of that they can go, part of who I am and how I feel is because of how my mum has brought me up. So that would be the legacy that I want. On a bigger scale than that, it's not that important. My kids would be the focus of my legacy.
That makes a lot of sense. And again, between all your answers to this question, what you said before and the way you're actually living your life feels like there is a strong degree of alignment between all of this, which is where you're living your best life and which is where you're happy. So, really fantastic hearing your story. And thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you for giving me this little opportunity to share it.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really enjoyed today, and I think I learned so much from this conversation.
And we're back, and we're here to wrap up. But before we do that, Kiara, it's time for one of my favorite segments where I teach you something from the past.
Is it time?
It is. It's time for the good old days. In the good old days. Kiara, I have a 2-for-1 special because I had something that I was thinking about in the context of travel, which I had thought about before the pod. But something came up in between our recordings as we broke for segments. Because when we were talking to Lisa, I said it's a name that you might have made up because you took your favorite Simpsons character and you took a city and you came up with Lisa Boston. And you actually asked me, what are the Simpsons?
So I don't know who the Simpsons are. I mean, you don't know all of my TV references either.
Simpsons is the longest running scripted TV show like ever. You should highly recommend you watch it. It's this animated family that lives in Springfield. All the characters are yellow. Lisa Simpson is one of the girls on the show. Bart is her brother. Homer's the father. And it's been around for, was it 35 years, something like that? They may have recently celebrated that. But it's hilarious. And there's a bunch of memes of what are the things the Simpsons actually predicted. And in one of the early episodes, they actually predicted Trump would be president, for instance. So that's not quite my good old days reference for you, but it's something to go back and watch. The Simpsons.
See, as a world schooler, this is my homework. Learning about my podcast co-hosts' TV recommendations.
You might even call it your homework. Let's say in the good old days when we had to research for travel. How do you research for travel now, Kiara? Like when you need to do a trip?
Actually, podcasts is a big part of the research I do pre-travel. A lot of my research does end up being post-travel as well. I also do use ChatGPT a bit to find out about what I should be researching. And then different websites, YouTube videos online, some documentaries sometimes on Netflix.
So in the good old days, before the internet, before ChatGPT, before YouTube, before websites, before podcasts, we had these travel guidebooks. Lonely Planet was the most famous one. So you'd actually either rent out a book or you'd read up about places to go on a book. And again, before the internet, no Google Maps. You'd take out maps so you'd kind of know where to get to from place to place. So you had to do a ton of research, and even something as minor as once I land in a city and get to the airport and how do I find my hotel, you would do a lot more research on things like that. I remember I used to sometimes like print out directions to a hotel so I wouldn't get lost or figure out what the best public transport option was or things like that. Whereas today, now you've got your phone, now you've got a Wi-Fi or some mobile connectivity, and you can just figure things out on the fly. But in the good old days, you'd take your lonely planet, you'd carry around your maps, and you'd, IRL figure things out.
I can't imagine traveling like this at all. I have heard some stories from my parents about having physical maps and what you just talked about. But I'm really glad the travel has become so much easier. Because world schooling is all about traveling, so it's made world schooling a whole lot easier.
And that is actually what we talked about a lot in today's pod. What was your takeaway from everything Lisa had to say?
So this whole podcast is about unconventional, and a lot of people might think the unconventional is scary because the unconventional is unknown. But what Lisa made me think about is also the conventional is also unknown. A lot of people are doing it, so we think it's less scary, but you never know what can happen. She talked about how actually staying in the UK would be brave for them. And this just seemed like the natural thing to do, the thing they felt like would be the right thing to do because it would make them happy. So that was my takeaway from Lisa. What about you?
For me, it was a lot she talked about of going with the flow. And I joke with my brother and sister-in-law about this all the time because I usually like to plan a little bit in advance. I like to have my tickets booked, a few months in advance. And they're literally like in Singapore and like, oh, we just booked a flight. We're going to Vietnam tomorrow. And I'm like, how can you do this? This is madness. I can't handle kind of going with the flow for something like this. But Lisa's entire life to an extent is, go with the flow, figure it out. Things will work themselves out. An immense amount of faith that you can always try things and if they don't work out, you can always plug yourself back in. And I think that mindset requires a high degree of flexibility coupled with confidence that things will work themselves out. And in it is this optimism and inner belief that you can pull it off. And as she talked about her advice to a 14-year-old self, which is, you are worthy, you are valuable. I think she's imbibed all that and truly believes that herself, because to be able to go with as much fluidity and still figure out the path and evolve. And now going from world schooling to actually Bali's nice, we'll plant roots here for a while. And we don't know what life will be like in 5 years from now, but who thinks that far ahead? I thought was refreshing and is a perspective that I think I can learn from.
Yeah. Actually, now that I think about it, it has nothing to do with the Boston family, but Bali's vibe is just so go with the flow. Like all the locals that you need to go with the flow when you're in Bali. You cannot be there any other way.
Which is also great advice when you're swimming in the water and there's a current. Don't swim against the current. Just go with the flow.
Unfortunately, this is the end of an episode that I have really, really enjoyed. I don't know about you, Arvind. But that's all for today. Go with the flow. And until next time, drive safe on the road less traveled.
Peace out, party people.